Hello dosto, good evening and welcome to the NEET PG Live Daily. Today I am available with yet another session on drugs which affects blood or blood components. So in this series today I am taking class on very important group of drugs that are used very commonly. You must have heard the name of atorvastatin, which is the worldwide has number one sale. It is the drug which is generating revenue, highest revenue among all the drugs. This is probably highest selling drug. So today we'll be talking about the drugs which reduces or reduce plasma cholesterol level, that is bad cholesterol, or other lipoproteins as well. And so this is the first part of this topic. Rest I will take in next class. So with this let me tell you something that those students who have made their appearance for the first time on this NEET PG Live Daily, let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Pramod Sharma. I am a clinical pharmacologist by super speciality and I have done my MD and DM from PGI Chandigarh, and I am also recipient of Rastriya Gaurav Award. Guys, once again I am reminding you about this important app. This is a messenger app called Telegram, and this app is available on any portal, that is Play Store or Apple Store, and just like WhatsApp, which we use quite often in our daily life for exchange of messages and all that, media, everything can be exchanged. You join this group on this Telegram app. This group, you cannot send any message, but you will definitely receive information about the classes, timing, the educator. So this will help you plan your day, because you guys are also involved in preparing for your classes, your entrance. So you must be having your own timetable and all that. So if you have beforehand information about this schedule of classes on the NEET PG Live, then you can always make a tweak, can little bit tweak your timetable, and and can attend any lecture which you feel is important, or you are very much willing to watch any session that is taken by your favorite educator or something like that. So that way you can always spare some time to watch these sessions, and by clicking this link you can directly reach to the NEET PG Live Daily session. There you can watch whichever program or session is being streamed and all that. So this is important, guys. If you have not downloaded, please download it so that you get information right in time. There is another app. This is called Unacademy learning app, which is made by Unacademy, and this is also available on both the platform, like on Play Store, and that is for Android users, and on Apple Store for iOS users. If you are not aware of, let me tell you, this app, you can attend on this app, you can attend special classes, similar live sessions that are actually taken by the same educators usually, and there are no different set of educators for that. So these special classes are also absolutely free. This is what is a important thing for you guys, because you are getting free services at all the places. So this is if you are not aware, just download this app and install it on system and be on this platform. And just tomorrow I will be taking a class on this learning app, that is special class. So, and that is important class, that is clinical pharmacology of the antimicrobial use. So that could be of great help for you for your PG exams. So all principles to how an antibiotic should be used, what factors should be kept in mind while selecting a drug, prescribing a drug, the patient conditions and all that, the resistant pattern, these the organism involved, everything that is important clinical pharmacology aspect of the antimicrobial use. So if you guys can download it, install it, you can very well watch tomorrow me live on that platform, and you can attend this, and you inform spread this information to your friends, because you should help your friends knowing all these things, because if they also come to know about this, that will be in fact a kind of social service you will be doing, because let other people also take or make use of these free services. If you need more facilities in terms of something which is other than these classes only, you need something else, guidance, the cases, this test series and strategies, special courses, customized courses for your need and all that. So those services are also available on Unacademy, and that is under the platform NEETPG Plus. But this NEETPG Plus is better not free of cost like these portals are by YouTube, you on YouTube and this Unacademy learning app. So these services, other than that, there is a service which provides a lot of facilities in terms of to make you better prepared for your exams and all that. So that service is there, but that is paid service. You need to subscribe, get a subscription for make it. You need to get a subscription to watch or take advantage of all the facilities provided by the NEETPG Plus. This subscription is available for 24 months and 12 months, though we always recommend 24 months. But if you are not willing to or is not able to buy subscription for 24 months, 12 months will also do, because this much period is required. Why we suggest this little longer subscription period? Because you should have an opportunity, or you should have sufficient time to meet or face all the educators from different speciality, because in MBBS there are many course subjects. For each subject you have an educator, so you should be at least exposed to all the educators, so you don't even only learn academics from them, but also learn many other things as well, because they know how to crack the examination and all that. They can give tip on that as well. So this is important for you to have exposure of almost every educator from all the field of the medical education, and that is the reason why 12 months at least is recommended, because syllabus is also little lengthy, and moreover during this 12 period you will be attending many special courses which are actually launched by these educators, that are very focused and need based kind of courses, and maybe customized as per the need of different PG entrance examinations and all that. So that would be highly grateful, useful for you to have to attend those courses, and that will definitely make your chances better to crack the examination. Of course, because this is a paid service, so you get a lot many things extra other than these live classes. And if you apply for any of the subscription period, that you need to pay a certain amount, but if you use my referral code, that is Dr. Pramod, you will get 10% instant discount. And if you see for the 12 months, the amount roughly comes to, after application of this 10% discount, it is hardly around 20,000, and that I don't think is out of reach of most of the people. So you can easily afford that, and by adding little extra you can extend your subscription to 2 years. The facilities which I was talking about, that this NEETPG Plus offers to its learners, that is not only these live classes. These live classes are different from other classes, because here you have more opportunity to interact with the educator in real time. That is the difference. The no difference in the quality of the classes, but this is the difference. And because the number of learners on paid platform are always less, so the educators also have one-to-one kind of interaction, and they can give personalized attention to each and every learner. And there is ample opportunity for the learners also to raise queries, ask questions, clear doubts, mitigate all your confusions and all that. So you can always interrupt educator during the live classes, so that way it becomes a little better, kind of learning process, because unless there is a communication between the learner and the educator or the teacher or the student, I don't think this learning process will be more effective. And here you will realize that you will just have a feel of being in the physical class. In fact, it is so interactive. You have facilities like other live poll facilities, leaderboard facilities. These are not only important for you, for us also, to have an idea about the group performance and all that. And this is something which is not never provided free to anybody at any portal, let it be any learning platform in the country. These test series and their analysis, so these are available there. Ample of these material are available there. You can solve as many as possible. That is always in your benefit, and do as much as possible. And other than that, as per the mandate of this NEET PG Plus, we need to take live doubt clearing sessions after every 3 lessons taught on the during any plus courses, special courses. So in the 4th you can always clear your doubt related to past lessons, but this is an additional opportunity for you to clear your doubt. However, you can always ask anything during the live class, and it is not necessary that it is to be asked during doubt clearing session. That is there after every 3 classes, but you can ask anytime anything related to the course, and only those things are entertained, nothing extra. And this is a kind of one-stop solution for you guys, one-stop solution, because if you have this subscription, you don't need, means things are done. The rest is your genuine effort and study, hard work at everything. And this is unlimited, this subscription, one subscription with unlimited access to everything. Offline content is never a problem because it is a paid service. You can download as much as possible, and you can watch all the videos offline, or notes, etc. Everything you can take offline, and can always watch them as if whenever you feel like. So this is all benefits of the NEET PG Plus. That is why this has been kept as a paid service, and because we are providing, or Unacademy is providing many extra things on this platform. And moreover, in the terms of free classes, the Academy has actually, if you see, more than a majority of the people are enjoying these free services provided by the Unacademy, which is a very good, or I will say a noble gesture of the Unacademy, that is actually taking this medical education, or this education, to a higher level, one step ahead, and trying to democratize this kind of services, so that more and more who are underprivileged and all, they can also take advantage of free content and all that. And for this I will appreciate, I gave full marks to NEET PG, this Unacademy, and which is right now the number 1 learning platform for you guys in this country. So with that, let us begin the topic of the day, that is hypolipidemic drugs. or also called as cholesterol reducing drugs, and they can be named differently as per the convenience. And so let us introduce you with the topic. These dyslipidemias, actually the lipid disorders, these are metabolic disorders that actually is caused by change in the, or usually increase in the any lipoprotein species. Not always increase, because there could be decrease, especially in HDL. So new lipoprotein species, and that can be called as and people use different term to categorize these or name these conditions, like hyperlipoproteinemias or hyperlipidemias. Many people say anti-hyperlipidemic drugs for this class of drugs. But one term is hyperlipemia, is specifically denotes this hyperlipemia. If it is word used, it is specifically denotes the high level of triglycerides. So this hyperlipoproteinemias, hyperlipidemias, this cannot give you an idea what we are talking about, whether it is LDL cholesterol, VLDL rise, or or triglyceride rise. But the hyperlipemia is specifically related to the increased level of triglyceride. And the problems with this increased lipoproteins in the blood is of clinical relevance, because the two major important problems that can be associated with these hyperlipidemias are first is acute pancreatitis, that is usually seen with marked triglyceridemia. But for this you need to have a very high triglyceride level, that is usually cannot occur due to the dietary increase in that is probably some metabolic defect or enzymatic defect that can lead to this kind of problem. Usually people having those present with acute pancreatitis have triglyceride in range of 1000 or more than that milligram per deciliter. And this is really a cause of concern, because hyperlipidemia or hypercholesteremia is considered as one of the very important risk factor for disease caused by this atherosclerosis, that is all cardiovascular disease or cerebrovascular accidents and all that. So this atherosclerosis, because of this very big population world over are suffering from any form of cardiovascular disease related to, or atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So this is a major disease burden on the community, especially. So many people world over lose their life because of CVD related death and all. So this dyslipidemia is a major cause of is a term called ASCVD, that is atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. This could be represent in any form. For example, it could be coronary artery disease, it can be peripheral vascular disease, it can be ischemic cerebrovascular disease, that is in stroke and all that, or this PVD can also be called as PAD, peripheral arterial disease, or the CAD can be CHD, coronary heart disease, all this. Both the genetic as well as disorders, as well as the lifestyle, consumption of junk food, the food rich in trans fat, saturated fat, these are all actually these things contribute to the development of hyperlipoproteinemia. Both are equally responsible, and this dyslipidemias can lead to many atherosclerotic conditions at a very premature age, or can lead to premature death due to accelerated if there is any defect in the lipoprotein receptors or any lipoproteins, etc. So this both the genetic disorders as well lifestyle contributes to development of dyslipidemia, and that is actually mainly associated with increased cholesterol level, that is LDL, low density lipoprotein, or reduced level of HDL-C. HDL, that is high density lipoprotein, or HDL is also called alpha lipoprotein because the apolipoprotein associated with HDL is A, category A usually. And beta lipoproteins are LDL, VLDL, IDL, because they are all having triglyceride rich and also this cholesterol rich proteins. These are called beta lipoproteins because the lipoproteins are associated with them are from class B. We have lot many agents, these drugs, anti-hyperlipidemic drug or hypolipidemic drug, you can say. Number of you can see several classes of drugs are available, and they can target a specific lipoprotein or can have effect on multiple lipoproteins. So these drugs are available with us. So but despite that, still search, because the load of this cardio atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease is so high in the society or community world over. So still the search for the better and more safe drug is on. So the category of the drug which are available and are used in these disorders are HMG coenzyme A inhibitor. If you ask me, these are the number one drugs, you can say the most commonly used drugs in hypercholesterolemia. The reason being they are effective, and also they have potential to alter the all kind of lipoproteins. That is, they can reduce reduction. They can lead to reduction of LDL-C. They can reduce plasma triglyceride level. They can also raise HDL to variable extent, and that is the reason these drugs are number one drugs used in hyperlipidemia. Other than that, bile acid binding resins, these are the drugs which actually binds bile salts, bile acids in the intestine and do not allow their enter a hepatic recirculation, and thereby leading to their loss of these bile acids in the feces, and that actually leads to more and more bile acid production that utilizes cholesterol. So there is decrease in cholesterol as a result. This HMG coenzyme inhibitor that are in use are atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, lova, simva, prava, fluva, and pitavastatin. And we have cholestyramine, cholestypol, cholestyramine. Cholestyramine is you will be surprised, also used in treatment of diabetes. Okay. Fibric acid derivatives, these are very old drugs also. These are available since ages. The clofibrate have many problems, but still maybe I don't know whether it is withdrawn or still there. Fenofibrate, bezafibrate, ciprofibrate, gemfibrozil. Gemfibrozil is very notorious for causing some certain issues. Nicotinic acid, one drug which is actually can has very good effect on HDL level, and this is the only drug which can reduce LPA level, lipoprotein A level. That is a different kind of lipoprotein. Cholesterol absorption inhibitors, this is an attempt to reduce the absorption of dietary cholesterol, thereby indirectly decreasing the serum cholesterol level. So this ezetimibe is there in the clinical practice available. Omega-3 fatty acid, ethyl esters, these fish oils are also used in hypertriglyceridemia and all that. PCSK9 inhibitors, they have monoclonal antibodies. This is very important class of drugs which are actually made available recently, not recently, maybe 4 or 5 years old. So these are called proprotein convertase subtilisin caxin 9 inhibitors, because it is the 9th member of the proprotein convertase family. So these human monoclonal antibody, fully human monoclonal antibodies like alirocumab and evolocumab are available. MTP inhibitors, MTP is macrosomal triglyceride transfer protein. Very important. If this MTP protein is absent, suppose in a human, it can lead to A beta lipoproteinemia even. So these drugs have recently been approved. This lomitapide and the inhibitor of ApoB100 synthesis. If ApoB100 synthesis is not there, there is no VLDL production. If VLDL is not produced, then what will happen? VLDL is the source of almost all LDL in the circulation is derived from VLDL. So there will be reduction in the LDL also. So this is mipomersin. This is oligosaccharide, oligonucleotide, I think, or sorry, antisense type kind of thing. And these almost we have 9 classes of drugs available with us. So this is not something We have variety of drugs to be used in, and total number if you add, this will be more than 20 or 25 drugs almost available. These lipoproteins, actually why they are called lipoproteins, because the name itself suggests that they must be having lipids and proteins. So these are these are macromolecules. These are not small in size, they are macromolecules, assembly of lipid and protein. And lipids, if we ask, so lipid component is formed by the free cholesterol, that is unesterified cholesterol, esterified cholesterol, triglycerides and phospholipids. These are the lipid content of these lipoproteins. And protein contents are known as apolipoproteins. Some people call it only apoproteins. Okay, you can call it apolipoproteins or apoproteins. These proteins, these apoproteins are important in many aspects. Why? Because they are important because they can provide structural stability to the lipoproteins. This is the very important role of these apoproteins. Moreover, they can act as ligands, like ApoE, one apoprotein that actually can bind to LDL receptors, that actually act as a ligand and can lead to binding of chylomicron remnant, etc. to the LDL receptor or LDL receptor protein. So they are important in lipoprotein receptor interaction. So interaction between the receptors in the liver or other tissues or cells and these specific lipoprotein. So these apoprotein actually can act as a ligand. And moreover, they can play a role of cofactors in enzymatic processes that are responsible for lipoprotein metabolism. I'll tell you that for example, lipoprotein lipase, for that you need ApoC2. So there are these apoproteins can act as cofactor in this enzymatic process. So mutations in lipoprotein or their receptors, as I said, can lead to premature death because of the accelerated atherosclerosis and all that. So this dyslipidemias can commonly occur and can lead to premature death because of these atherosclerotic diseases and all that. And lipoproteins are usually spherical in shape molecules. There are spherical molecules which has a core and the outer coating. So in the core we have the component which are usually lipid water hydrophobic. So these are cholesterol esters and triglycerides. So they form the core, and outside we have water soluble or water loving components, especially the phospholipids, apoproteins. And other than that, we have free cholesterol, unesterified cholesterol. These are all forms the water soluble, means water or hydrophilic surface outside this core actually. Fine. So this is a little introduction about all this. And this diagram, if you follow me seriously, I will give you a lot of information in this diagram, because this diagram is there, but I have added many things in this so that I can make this lipoprotein metabolism a little easier for you, because then only you will understand. Because everybody knows, you can read drugs and all that, but you should know a little bit about this, how these all lipoproteins are formed, how they are actually metabolized, all this thing, how atherosclerosis happens and everything. So let me explain you right from the dietary. In the diet we can take, we have triglycerides, cholesterols, etc. So they are all absorbed through intestine. In this intestine, what happens, this cholesterol is first esterified with the help of an enzyme which is called acyl coenzyme A, acyl transferase 2, right? Acyl coenzyme cholesterol acyl transferase, sorry, acyl coenzyme A, cholesterol acyl transferase 2. This is 2, not 1, ACAT2, right? Likewise, we have LCAT, lecithin cholesterol acyl transferase, right? So this is acyl coenzyme A, cholesterol acyl transferase. So this leads to esterification of this cholesterol. So cholesterol esters, so they are absorbed as circulate in the plasma as cholesterol esters. So, and also this triglyceride is actually with the help of this microsomal triglyceride transfer protein, that is added, one apoprotein B48 is added to this triglyceride. So this is a characteristic which the triglyceride which is there in the chylomicron that has B48. So this MTP is very important. If it is not there, this will not be absorbed, right? So these two things occur in the intestine, and some free cholesterol will also be absorbed. So this free cholesterol, actually this is here, it should be like this. This goes to an HDL precursor molecule that can also called pre-beta HDL, and these are all in triglyceride, cholesterol esters, free cholesterol, or all is added into chylomicron. Chylomicron is very rich in triglyceride because our diet contains majority of the all oil and etc. we use as triglycerides. So this triglyceride is added to this chylomicron, and this ApoE, this apolipoprotein E, is also important, that remains binded to this chylomicron. Why it is important, I will tell you. And the primary apoprotein for this chylomicron is B48. It is just similar to B100, which is attached to LDL, but it is just 48% the size of the or weight of the this beta lipo with this B100. So this is B48. This makes it if it cannot bind with LDL receptors because of this B48, but this can bind to LDL receptor because of the presence of this. That is why I said this apolipoprotein act as ligand for lipoprotein receptor interaction. And this chylomicron is very rich in triglyceride and all that. That is why after fatty meal the plasma look oil like, that is why I said heparin actually causes lipemia clearing effect, that causes release of lipoprotein lipase from the vessel wall, and that can lead to lipemia clearing effect, and that is observed at much lower doses that is required for anticoagulation. So this chylomicron, this triglyceride is required by the cells and all that. So when this chylomicron moves and from the cells in the vascular system, they actually release lipoprotein lipase, and for that this cofactor ApoC2 is must actually. Without that, this lipoprotein lipase will not act. So this ApoC2, this is also apoprotein C, B, A is here. So this is ApoC2, so this is necessary. So this lipoprotein lipase hydrolyzes triglyceride in the chylomicrons and to free fatty acid, and this free fatty acid is either stored in the adipose tissues or taken up by the different tissues for use as energy, especially the cardiac muscles, skeletal muscles, and breast tissues, especially if female is lactating. And in these areas these fatty acid is taken up. Once triglyceride is removed from this hydrolyzed, it becomes chylomicron remnant. So it decreases in size because triglyceride content decreases, and this chylomicron remnant reaches to liver, and where their LDL receptor or LDL receptor protein, LDL receptor related protein or LDL receptors, these two act as receptor for this chylomicron remnant, or this chylomicron remnant can bind to this due to presence of this ApoE. If this apo is not there, it will not bind to this receptor. So it's because of this. So this chylomicron is taken inside, and further this its triglyceride is hydrolyzed inside all these things. And in the liver also there is MTP and ACAT2, because liver also synthesize triglyceride. If a person is not taking triglyceride, or there is restriction in the diet and all that, then the liver can synthesize triglyceride, and there actually triglyceride from the either increase beta oxidation, that is increase synthesis of the fatty acid in the liver, or due to the increased delivery of the fatty acids to the liver. So from all that it can synthesize triglyceride, and that is synthesized in the endoplasmic reticulum. So once it is synthesized, then this triglyceride is added to B100, because all this VLDL, IDL, LDL, they have B100 as a major apoprotein. So this endoplasmic reticulum, this triglyceride is synthesized, and that is to be incorporated into VLDL, because triglycerides circulate in VLDL. This is the major moiety which contains highest means too much of triglyceride, circulating triglyceride. And so what happens, this triglyceride is transferred through this macrosomal transfer protein to B100. If this does not happen, suppose MTP is because of some reason or is defective, then what will happen, this B100 which is available, that will also be degraded, and there will be no VLDL production also. But usually there is VLDL production. This VLDL is secreted by this liver, and this VLDL is rich in triglyceride. So just remember one thing, that whatever LDL we have in the blood is all derived from VLDL, right? So this VLDL is actually circulating. So this actually meets the demand of various tissues in the form of free fatty acid that is required. So with lipoprotein lipase, this is again hydrolyzed, and these free fatty acids can be utilized by muscle as an energy source, or can be stored in the adipose tissues. And once this triglycerides are hydrolyzed, so this becomes VLDL remnant, or called intermediate density lipoprotein. So this is called IDL. And further this IDL is taken up by the liver, where it is acted upon by hepatic triglyceride lipase, and can lead to formation of LDL. So LDL is very poor in triglyceride. It mainly contains cholesterol esters and all that, right? And what happens when there is triglyceride deficiency, right? So what happens, this liver actually takes all LDL and all that, and takes up LDL, and this converts, either take up this LDL back or converts it to LDL. So most of whatever triglyceride is there, that is taken up by endocytosis, receptor mediated endocytosis by the liver, and rest is converted into LDL, right? So what happens, this is called beta shift. If there is triglyceride level falls, then the LDL level rises. Actually, this is called beta shift, because shifting towards beta lipoproteins. So this IDL is further degraded by hepatic, it has been shown, because this is taken by the liver, and this hepatic triglyceride lipase act and forms a LDL. And LDL can also acted upon by can lead to formation of this free fatty acid, can be used by muscles and adipose tissues. So this LDPL is almost deficient in triglyceride, and this LDL can taken up by the liver for synthesis of many things, or it can be taken up by the peripheral tissues or cells, especially for the this contains cholesterol and all that. So cholesterol is required for the membrane synthesis, and everywhere it has role. But when this LDL is modified chemically, that is either oxidized or this acetylation happens, then this can be taken up by macrophages, because they have scavenger receptors on them, especially the this is SRB1, so that are SRA1, receptor or A2 receptors, scavenging receptors A2. So they take up those oxidized, because they only actually can be taken up by these cells when that is oxidized. So such receptors are present on them and they are converted into foam cells. That is actually leads to atherosclerosis and all that. Otherwise their LDL is taken by the peripheral cells, right? So up to this, from intestine to liver to peripheral cells, the LDL, this is from away from the liver. The cholesterol is going away from the liver. But now reverse transport, cholesterol transport should happen from peripheral cells to the liver. This is dependent on HDL, right? HDL is considered as good lipoprotein because it actually transport the peripherally deposited cholesterol to the liver, reverse transport, so that it can be catabolized there, right? And this LDL is bad because it gets deposited in the peripheral cells and can lead to atherosclerotic lesions and all that. So in the cells there are a transporter called ABCA1, that is ATP binding cassette transporter A1. This is a pump, actually flux pump, just like P-glycoprotein. So it actually leads to a flux of the free cholesterol. These are esterified cholesterol they are cholesterol de-esterified, used for membrane synthesis and all that. So whatever free cholesterol that is fluxed by this particular transporter, and this free cholesterol is taken by HDL precursor, and it also leads to efflux of the phospholipids, which are important component of this cholesterol, free cholesterol and phospholipids in the HDL molecule. So these are taken up by the HDL precursor molecule, or pre-beta HDL that is called, or it can also be taken by the HDL3, right? I will tell you what happens. This free cholesterol is there in the HDL precursor, phospholipids are there. This molecule is acted upon by LCAT, that is lecithin cholesterol acetyltransferase, right? So it leads to formation of HDL3. The HDL3 is why this is called HDL3, because this free cholesterol is esterified, and that esterified cholesterol gets deposited in the core of the cells. Cholesterol ester and triglyceride, what I said, they are water hydrophobic, and phospholipid is outside actually. And this HDL3 again gets converted into HDL2, right? And this and this free cholesterol also comes from the liver. You can see here, from liver also this free cholesterol can be HDL precursor, because it is all free cholesterol can be taken from there also. In HDL can be taken up by HDL, and this once this HDL3 it becomes HDL2. Once it further cholesterol esterification happens and cholesterol esters increases, so it becomes HDL2. So it becomes little larger in size, and moreover this HDL2 becomes further increased in size because it exchanges with these triglyceride rich proteins, this VLDL, IDL, chylomicron remnants. It exchanges cholesterol esters, because it is rich in cholesterol esters, so it sends cholesterol esters to them, and it takes back triglyceride like this. And it supplies also cholesterol to this steroidogenic tissue, adrenal, gonads and all that, so that there are receptors called scavenging receptor B1. So they are also present in the liver. So what happens, this cholesterol can be supplied here because that is required for steroidogenesis, for glucocorticoid, mineralocorticoid, sex hormones, etc. And this occurs because of the enzyme cholesterol ester transfer protein, CETP, this exchange. And not only triglyceride is exchanged, many apoproteins like ApoE, ApoC is also exchanged, that is comes to HDL along with triglyceride. Usually this ApoE, half of it is actually bound to all these triglyceride rich protein, chylomicron remnant, VLDL, IDL, etc. and rest half remain bound to this HDL. That is an important protein that is associated with HDL also. And this HDL is probably because maybe this is Ultimately, this HDL molecule, once supplied cholesterol here, this can be taken up by the liver through this receptors SRB1, and this HDL is taken up, and its triglyceride is released because it becomes now rich in triglyceride, and triglyceride molecule is bigger in size than the cholesterol esters. That is why if there is exchange of cholesterol esters with triglyceride, this molecules becomes larger in size. So it can be taken up by the liver, and from them that is taken everything what we say triglyceride etc. is taken and hydrolyzed to free fatty acid or something like that, and this this HDL precursor can again be produced by the liver and can send in the blood. This HDL precursor again ready. So this HDL3 is also, it is secreted in the form of, also this can also happen, HDL precursor molecule, and also it can take up all its triglyceride and all that, and this HDL3 molecule is again, this I have added this can be formed in HDL3, and this HDL3 is again ready to take up the cholesterol from the peripheral tissues and all that, and then this cycle continues actually, right? So one thing is very clear, LDL as such is not atherogenic. It is atherogenic once it is chemically modified by oxidation and all that. That's why we said oxidative stress and all that, reduce this oxidative stress and all. So that is important, because oxidized LDL ultimately is a ligand for scavenging receptor A, that is get deposited in the intimal cells and all that, or macrophages, all cells, these macrophages become foam cells and all that. And this liver also produce this LPA. This is a special lipoprotein which is similar to LDL, but problem is that it also has, along with LDL, has B100, it has B100 plus ApoA. That is why it is called LPA. Its structure, this APO structure, is similar to plasminogen, but it is not activated by tissue plasminogen activator, and it actually interferes with the fibrinolysis of the thrombus on the atheromatous plaque, inhibit fibrinolysis, and it is highly thrombogenic, highly atherogenic, this, and this lipoprotein is only reduced by till now only nicotinic acid. No other drug is effective in decreasing LPA level. This is highly atherogenic also. Moreover, there are many advantages of HDL molecules. It is not only responsible for reverse cholesterol transport, but it also has anti-inflammatory activity. Anti-inflammatory, it can have anticoagulant activity, it can have antiplatelet activity, it can have fibrinolytic activity, etc. So this is very protective also. HDL as such is protective. And one thing is very important, this ApoA1, though HDL moves along with, there are two important apolipoprotein for HDL, that is ApoA1 and ApoA2. But ApoA1 is the major apoprotein that is bound with HDL, and this alone, this decrease ApoA1 leads to reduce HDL level. So many drugs, like ApoA1 synthesis is increased by thyroxine, thyroxine and estrogen. That is why females have higher level of HDL. So this ApoA1 deficiency can lead to decreased HDL, or also this decrease ApoA1 alone, let it be HDL is normal, suppose even, but it will not be if there is decrease ApoA1, that is an independent risk factor. It is more important than decreased HDL. A patient with decreased HDL level is at higher risk of CAD, but patient with decreased ApoA1 level is much higher risk of atherosclerotic disease. So this is very important, ApoA1 degree. This is independent risk factor. Fine. So this is all about this basic lipid metabolism, lipoprotein metabolism. because this is very important, and these drugs have been tried, because if we block this can lead to some increase in HDL and all that, but in trials they failed. They in fact increased cardiovascular events. So otherwise the drugs were tried against the CETP, cholesterol ester transfer protein and all that, but luckily we have now protein these drugs against MTP and this B100 synthesis inhibitor. These are two new addition to the armamentarium of this therapy of hyperlipidemia. Anything else left here? I don't think, because this is very clear. Okay, fine, let's move ahead. This table also gives you an idea, because this is density. This is the least dense molecules, or the you can say smallest density, and with this as we go down the density increases, right? So not about this, I am not talking about this up to HDL, this high, that is why it is called high density lipoprotein. This is very low density, but this is least density actually, if you see intermediate density, low density lipoprotein. So this chylomicron is remnants are very rich in triglyceride, because they are taking dietary triglycerides. So triglyceride to cholesterol level is 10:1, and it is synthesized in intestine, and this is important. B48 is there because of the MTP. E was there because it can bind to the receptor. C2 was necessary for lipoprotein lipase to act, right? But this VLDL is synthesized by the liver. This is important. If VLDL synthesis does not occur, then triglyceride synthesis will, cholesterol decreases, then VLDL will not occur. VLDL will not occur, then triglyceride will not synthesize. I'll tell you how statin works. So this is either endogenous VLDL or hepatic triglycerides. Here the triglyceride, it is triglyceride rich 5:1, ideal 1:1. Here all this VLDL and LDL, ideal all have B100. Just remember this, not B48, right? And HDL has A1 mainly, but it has E also, because I said E, 50% of the E is bound to this, and otherwise E is present in all this. E 50% is there, right? So all these things are there, and this HDL mainly contains phospholipids and cholesterol esters. It takes free cholesterol, converted into cholesterol ester. It takes phospholipids, and LDL is especially rich in cholesterol ester, so it supplies cholesterol to the into peripheral cells, and it can be taken up by the liver in case if there is cholesterol deficiency for synthesis of bile acids, etc., and many other things. So this is something where it is synthesized. This VLDL is liver produced in the liver, but this chylomicron is from the so this, remember this LDL, whatever circulating LDL you have is all derived from the VLDL. If somehow VLDL production is reduced, LDL will also be reduced, right? So very important class of drugs, though they are present for more than 3 decades. I think these drugs are available in the clinical practice. So these statins are most commonly used drug for hyperlipidemia, and in fact I can say very commonly used drug. So major pharmacodynamic effects of statins, if we see, is the reduction in they cause reduction in the LDLC level, LDL cholesterol levels, and that can be achieved by reduced conversion of or inhibition of this HMG coenzyme A reductase enzyme that converts HMG coenzyme to mevalonate. That is initial and rate limiting step in the synthesis of cholesterol. Rate limiting step. This HMG coenzyme A actually is nothing but 3-hydroxy and 3-methyl glutaryl coenzyme A, right? And it is produced by acetyl coenzyme A plus acetoacetyl coenzyme A by enzyme HMG coenzyme A synthase. Here it is a synthesis enzyme, and this, once this is formed, this is reduced to form mevalonic acid, mevalonate, which is a precursor to the cholesterol synthesis. So these drugs, statins, actually act by blocking this HMG coenzyme reductase enzyme and reduce its conversion to mevalonate. And as I said, it is an initial and rate limiting step. And all these statins, their active forms, most of them are active right from the beginning, but some require activation in the liver. So they all active forms are structural analog of HMG coenzyme. This is very genuine thing, because to get attracted to a particular receptor or to bind with an enzyme, they should have structural similarity to its substrate or receptor ligand. Means some so that that get confused and it binds with this, these kind of structurally similar compounds. So these are all structural analog of HMG coenzyme. That is why they are able to bind, and they call it partial inhibition of the enzyme, but this is reversible and competitive. Competitive inhibition many a time can be non-reversible if it is because of the covalent bonding or slow dissociation, then it could be irreversible also, but it is competitive and reversible. So this is partial inhibition only. Got my point? Now what happens when this all occurs? If this is inhibited, then the production of the cholesterol will reduce. So this statins affect blood cholesterol by many mechanisms, circulating blood cholesterol by many mechanisms. Just remember, give attention, because I will be discussing more about these things later. Inhibit hepatic cholesterol synthesis. That is true, because it inhibited that enzyme and HMG coenzyme reductase. Then if mevalonate is not formed, so if the ingredients are not there, then how cholesterol synthesis will occur? So cholesterol synthesis decreases, hepatic. And when cholesterol synthesis occurs, then liver sense it, oh, there is less of cholesterol, what should I do? Then what it does, it actually expresses or increases the expression of its a gene which is responsible for LDL receptor synthesis, so that it can trap more and more LDL from the circulation, because they contain cholesterol, so liver can take cholesterol from there. So it will lead to catabolism of the LDL from the body. So what will happen? Circulating LDL level will decrease. So that can happen. It also decreases the catabolism of the LDL receptors. Not only increases the production of LDL receptor synthesis, but decreases the breakdown of also. Enhancing the removal of LDL precursors like IDL. I told you, it can also enhance the removal of the VLDL, ILDL. These are all LDL precursor. LDL is ultimately synthesized from what? VLDL, which is converted to IDL, and that is converted further into LDL. So IDL, VLDL all are removed from the circulation. Also, it decreases hepatic VLDL production. Why hepatic VLDL production is reduced? We saw VLDL contains 1:5 ratio of this is cholesterol and this is triglyceride. So from where this cholesterol comes? Because there is already deficiency of cholesterol, so liver stops making VLDL, because cholesterol is not there, because that is a component of the VLDL. So it reduces VLDL production. It will be there, but it will be reduced. So this VLDL is reduced. So less VLDL is in the circulation, then triglyceride level will reduce, because triglyceride is a major component of the VLDL. So this is important, and this actually results in triglyceride lowering effect of this statins, and it reduces triglyceride to a modest extent, but in many cases the reduction may be as good as the LDL reduction. Got this point? And all this effect, why we are talking about hepatic cholesterol synthesis, hepatic. Why? Because major effect is on the liver, because once these statins are absorbed through intestine, the majority of the drug which is absorbed is taken by or extracted by this liver, hepatic parenchymal cells. So that is why action is maximum is in the liver. It can affect other in other tissues also where cholesterol synthesis is occurring. It can be affected there as well. Fine. So the major effect is on the liver. That is why they mainly affect. This is the mechanism of action. This I will show you how. This is very informative diagram. You see, as I said, this acetyl coenzyme A plus acetoacetyl coenzyme A synthesize HMG coenzyme A, and this is HMG coenzyme synthase enzyme, which I was talking about. And this is HMG coenzyme reductase, which converts this coenzyme A to mevalonate. Here exactly the statin acts, which you can see as a cross, it inhibits this enzyme. So there is decrease. You can see this triangle is facing downward, means there is decrease in the mevalonate. If there is decrease in mevalonate, there is intracellular cholesterol concentration decreases. Then cell sense it. There are sensors. So what the cell does, hepatic cell does, it actually stimulates the release of or leads to proteolytic cleavage of this transcription factor, which is attached to the suppose this is endoplasmic reticulum. So from the membrane of the endoplasmic reticulum, this proteolytic cleavage of this steroid response element binding protein 2 occurs, and that is facilitated by SCAP, that is SRBP, sterol element response element binding protein 2 cleavage activating protein, SCAP. With the help of SCAP, this SRBP is released from the endoplasmic reticulum, and see, that is why this concentration is increased, because it is released from there. It is translocated to the inside the nucleus, where it binds with the sterol receptor element binding response element, sterol response element on the DNA in the LDL receptor gene area, promoter area of the LDL receptor gene, and leads to production of increased messenger RNA or increased LDL receptors. See this triangle. But along with that, there is also increased expression of certain, these enzymes. These are also increased. Their expression is also increased by this sterol, because there should be some checkpoint or balanced activity. So this is the protein convertase septilysin caxin 9 inhibitor. 9 enzyme. So this inhibitor we have already know. So this enzyme and all the go to Golgi apparatus and get processed there, ultimately post translational modification, everything, and they are actually now sent to the membrane. So this LDL receptors actually it does, these LDL receptors, they all catch this LDL molecules from the circulation and take cholesterol from there. So LDLs are reducing actually. This you can see. So they all take up this LDL inside the cell, but this PCSK9, this enzyme is responsible for this, actually degrades LDL receptors. See this PCS9K that binds to the LDL receptors and degrades these receptors. So this actually interfere with the take up of the LDL, so thus it can interfere with the lipoprotein uptake. When there is increased LDL uptake, these proteins leads to degradation of LDL receptors. But other factor, if there is deficiency with intracellular cholesterol, these transcription factor tends to increase expression of the LDL receptor. Fine. So it has been given reduction, increase, and this is inhibition. So this is the cellular mechanism. I think this is clear to you. Fine. Let us talk little about pharmacokinetics. That is very important in case of statins, and in fact their mechanism of action or action is dependent on this specific characteristic pharmacokinetics. After oral administration of these statins, they are absorbed in the intestine, and this is highly variable, and it can vary from 30 to 85%. I have talked about absorption. I am not talking about bioavailability. Absorption and bioavailability are two different things. a thing can be absorbed 100%, no doubt about it. But bioavailability is defined as the intact drug, chemically unchanged drug that reaches to systemic circulation. So suppose a drug is absorbed 100%, but before reaching to the systemic circulation, it has to cross the intestinal wall, the liver. So there are enzymes in the intestinal wall also, there are enzymes in the liver also. So they may degrade a particular fraction of this absorbed absorbed drug. So actually drug was absorbed 100%. Suppose 50% is degraded before reaching the system. The bioavailability is 50%. So this absorption is variable. First of all, 30 to 85% is absorbed. But fluvastatin, you can remember this like full. Fluva means full absorption. It is fully absorbed, 100%. Most of these statins are actually, they are active right from the beginning. And active form is called their, hydroxy acid form. These are called hydroxy acid form. They are all already in hydroxy acid form, so they are active. But simvastatin and lovastatins, they are prodrug because they are available as lactone, inactive lactones, which are actually in liver after absorption converted into active form, that is simvastatin acid and lovastatin hydroxy acid, same in the acidic form. Now absorption, I said, is variable, 30 to 85%. Now extensive first pass, I am not talking about metabolism, I am not writing FPM, I am telling E, extraction, first pass extraction in the liver. Means most of the drug which is absorbed is extracted by the liver or liver cells, so that the drug which appears in the blood is much less. So there is extensive first pass extraction of the statins or their metabolism. So bioavailability of these drugs or their metabolites are only 5 to 30%. You can see very low and variable, 5 to 30%. You can see some drugs are absorbed. I think this fluvastatin is absorbed 100%, but its bioavailability is around 13 or 17%. And this uptake in the liver cell is because of this organic anion transporter 1B1. They are similar to present in the kidney and all that. Cationic transporter, organic anion transporters. This organic anion was for uric acid and all that. Penicillin or uric acid and NSAIDs or thiazide diuretics or furosemide diuretics, that all were secreted by this kind of an organic anion transporter. So they are also present in the liver, but they may be different, but action is there. They are also involved in the transport of anions. So this is also called as solute carrier, SC solute carrier anion organic transporter 1B1, right? SLCO 1B1, solute carrier organic anion transporter 1B1. Fine. This if you see, when it is given this drug and you given repeatedly, then steady state is achieved. At steady state, you will see the most of the drug is present in the active metabolite in the blood, and very small amount of parent drug present in the blood. And most of the metabolites and the parent drugs are bound to plasma protein, more than 90%, highly plasma protein bound. But highly we usually use in the term of more than 90%. But those who have binding to the 99%, like warfarin and all that, they are called highly plasma protein bound. That is protein bound, 90%, 5% more than. The metabolites of almost all statins, barring few like pravastatin and fluvastatin, they all have this inhibitory activity on HMG coenzyme A reductase, some activity to inhibit HMG coenzyme A reductase. Parent drug is doing, and their metabolite are active actually, except two, as I said. And T half of these drugs vary from very small to 1 to 4 hour only. Bioavailability is less, absorption is variable, and half-life is low. But there are some which has higher half-life. For example, Atorva and rosuvastatin, they have half-life of around 20 hours. Simvastatin has half-life of around 12 hours. and more than 70% of the metabolite they are actually biotransformed in the liver, and metabolites are excreted by the liver and they appear in the feces. So it is due to biliary excretion. It is said that the cholesterol synthesis, endogenous cholesterol synthesis, is maximum between midnight and 2 a.m. 12 to 2 a.m. at night. So it is said that because these drugs have short half-life, so they should be taken at the bedtime to ensure maximum cholesterol synthesis inhibition. So okay, that is fine for the drugs which have short half-life, but especially this atorvastatin and rosuvastatin can be taken any time of the day because of their long half-life, any time of the day. So that improves adherence to the therapy, optimize the adherence. And moreover, because of the longer half-life of this atorvastatin and rosuvastatins, they have greater LDL decreasing, greater effect on the LDL levels than the other statins. You can see these are more potent in that term. Pharmacodynamic effect, as I said, this drug has effect on both LDL TG reduction as well as increase in HDLC level. So they have modest effect on TG reduction, and if it can be more if triglyceride is more than 250 milligram per deciliter. Usually we have the normal value is less than 150 milligram. So if it is triglyceride is already raised, then reduction will be more marked, and it could be as good as the similar to the reduction in the HDLC level. What happens in the HDLC level? This HDLC level has been shown to increased by 5 to 10%, and that is not related to the dose of the statin or irrespective of the which statin is used. Not dose related, not statin related. Which statin is used, with everything it is actually similar, 5 to 10%. Actually there is a problem. Why? Because most of the studies which has been done with these statins and all that, they all removed patient because the major pharmacodynamic effect of statin is the reduction in the LDC level, LDLC level, that is low density lipoprotein. So by default they included patient with high LDL level and with normal gender specific HDL level. Like females, because of the estrogen, the HDL level is usually on the higher side, so they should have in them the normal HDL level is 50 to 60 milligram per deciliter. But we, because of androgen production, we have lower HDLC level. So this HDLC in male considered as normal, that those who have 40 to 50 milligram per deciliter, right? So only patient with normal HDL were included. So in them the increase was found to be 5 to 10%. But we do not know if the patient who have lower HDL, like less than 35 milligram percent, whether there is any different effect of statins on HDL level. Do they cause more clinically significant increase in HDLC level? More clinically significant increase in HDLC level? That is not known. So such studies, I think, should be done so that actual, maybe it is good for the statins increasing 5 to 10% that is not too much, but maybe because those who have specifically lower HDLC level, this increase may be more or maybe less even. So we do not know about that. This LDLC level, all statins, if you see the dose response relationship of the statin dose and the reduction in the LDLC level, so the efficacy in decreasing the LDLC based on this dose response relationship curve, it has been found that it follows the log linear pattern. What is log linear? Log linear pattern is nothing, I just tell you. They increase linearly, the effect is increasing linearly if the dose is increased in log fashion, right? And response is linearly increasing like that. So all statins, depending upon the potency and all that, some are more efficacious. So at their initial starting dose, all these drugs has starting dose actually. So they all cause starting dose cause reduction by 20 to 30%. Now with every doubling of the dose, suppose we used 5 milligram of rosuvastatin, that is the starting dose of rosuvastatin, that causes 30% reduction. Suppose with each doubling of dose, suppose 5 to we have made it 10, so it will become 36%, extra 6% decrease in LDLC with each doubling of dose. And now 10 to 20 if it is done, this will become 36 to 42. Now 20 to 40 is done, it becomes 48. This is the maximum dose of rosuvastatin. We cannot go beyond that. So this is the maximum reduction that rosuvastatin can achieve, around 50%. This is called log linear reduction, and we are increasing by a log factor of 2 every time we are doubling. So this is a logarithmic fashion, right? Not increasing by log factor of 10, we are doubling log factor of 2, log 2 we are increasing, right? And with every increase there is additional 6% increase from the baseline, right? And maximal decrease in the plasma cholesterol level is achieved when they are used in regular basis, daily basis, within 7 to 10 days. And these statins are effective in almost all patients with raised LDLC, except homozygous familial hypercholesteremia. This is homozygous. You can see E also, that is heterozygous. Homozygous familial hypercholesteremia, that is a condition, metabolic disorders. So this in this condition actually with normal doses there is no effect or very low effect in decreasing LDLC, because they require very high doses of statins, and because both the alleles, because homozygous forms, so both the alleles of the gene for these LDL receptors are coding to or leading to formation of synthesis of dysfunctional LDL receptors. That is the reason both the alleles are affected. That's why it is a homozygous condition. So LDL receptor function is not proper. So because of that, less means statin. What statin does actually inhibit synthesis. Then there is an increase in the LDL receptor expression that actually trap LDL from the circulation. That is why circulating cholesterol decreases LDL. So but here the LDL receptors are not properly functioning, so they require high doses, and effect may be partial only. Adverse effect, if we talk about statins, they are very important, and these statins are very important class of drugs, so we should know inside out about these statins. Everything we should be aware of. We should be really well versed with all the aspects of this class of drugs. Hepatotoxicity, there is chances of hepatotoxicity, but the serious hepatotoxicity is rare and unpredictable. You cannot predict when it will occur. And this is also not very much hype about this hepatotoxicity, but serious hepatotoxicity is very rare. The incidence is around 1 case per million person year of use. What did you understand? 1 case per million person year of use. It means if 1 million people are using statin and they use it for 1 year, then 1 person will develop, out of 1 million will develop serious hepatotoxicity. Or it can also be understood like this: if 1 person taking this statin for 1 million year, 1 person, so 1 person cannot survive for 1 million years, then there will be chance that he will develop or she will develop serious hepatotoxicity. Or you can say like this also: if this is 1 million people using it for 1 year, then 1 case. Or you can say 10 million people using it for 1 year, then what will happen? So 1 year has 12 months and 10 million people, so means 1.2 months. If 10 million people used it for 1.2 months, then one case will develop serious hepatotoxicity. So many times this is actually cumulative figure kind of thing, person years of use, right? So it is there are many guidelines and many the school of thought says, or many societies says that one should measure ALT level at the baseline before initiating therapy with statins. Some societies says no, there is no requirement of routine periodic monitoring ALT or any other liver enzyme prior to starting statin therapy, because it is not effective in detecting or preventing the incidence of serious hepatotoxicity or something like that. So some people say like that. So there is a controversy now that whether one should, but usually it is done. But LFT should be evaluated in certain situation, like if a patient is reports to you with the sign and symptoms of liver injury, and he has been put on initiated or started on statin, and or there is an increase in the statin dose. So in these situations, doing this liver enzymes will give meaningful information. So there is no consensus whether some say it should be done and some say it should not be done, but this is definitely unanimous consensus is there on this, at such a situation LFT must be done. Myopathy means damage to muscles or toxicity to the muscles. It is a major adverse effect. This is more common and major adverse effect than the hepatotoxicity. And this myopathy is a broad spectrum of muscle complaints. Can vary from simply the pain or soreness of the mild soreness or pain of the muscles with little weakness, that is called as myalgia, and that can tend up to the life-threatening rhabdomyolysis, breakdown of muscle protein, that can lead to acute renal failure and all that. So life-threatening it could be rhabdomyolysis. So it can extend from myalgia to rhabdomyolysis. And risk of this rhabdomyolysis or the myopathy increases in relation to the dose. As you increase the dose of the statins, or there is increase in the plasma concentration of the proteins, statins, there is always a more chance of having myopathy. So several factors may heighten myopathy risk. For example, those who are elderly, especially more than 80 years of age. So something which interferes with the catabolism of the these statins will always lead to increase in plasma concentration. For example, so the individuals more than 18 years of age, those with small body size, those individual, perioperative period and hypothyroidism and those which perioperative period, small body size, hypothyroidism, and also with patient with hepatic or renal impairment. All can lead to increased risk of myopathy, right? Statin lactones, I told you lactones are these lactones are specifically very strong inhibitors of a mitochondrial complex 3. This is called mitochondrial complex 3 activity. This may actually lead to inhibition of this complex up to 85%, and moreover they are more potent than the acid form, hydroxy acid form. Lactone form is inactive kind of thing, hydroxy acid form. This hydroxy acid form from this electron forms are 3 times more potent in causing cytotoxicity than the acid form. So that is why myopathy more occurs with those with electron moiety. So they are, because they interfere with the activity of this mitochondrial complex 3 activity. CPK measurement, that is creatine phosphokinase, which is a major muscle enzyme, is not routinely necessary unless until there is some drugs which are being given along with concomitantly being used with statins that are known to raise the risk of myopathy. That I will discuss. What are those drugs? Especially the drugs which inhibits catabolism of the statins or reduces hepatic uptake. So what will happen? More and more the drug will be available in the active drug will be available in the plasma, and myopathy risk is associated with increased dose or plasma concentration indirectly. So these drugs could be fibrates, especially the gemfibrozil, cyclosporin, digoxin, warfarin, azoles, this macrolide macrolides antibiotic. You have HIV protease inhibitor, we have amiodarone, we have nefajodone, etc. These drugs can call azoles. These azoles are antifungal azoles, itraconazole, ketoconazole, voriconazole, etc. So these drugs can affect these aspect of the drugs and can lead to increased risk of. See, these statins and this acid form and electron forms. The electron form are more prone to cause inhibition of this complex 3, which is associated with in the mitochondrial complex 3, and that can lead to, because it's energy production and all that is involved. So this leads to weakness of the muscle. Then so these electron forms are more important for causing this myopathy. Gemfibrozil, among these fibrates, this gemfibrozil is most commonly linked with myopathy because it has dual action. First of all, it actually blocks this O8 TP1B1. So there is decreased extraction, first pass extraction, the one. And second is it also decreases the transformation of this statins to transposition by conjugation reaction. That conjugation is glucuronide conjugation. Decrease glucuronide conjugation. So the conjugation is usually to inactivate a drug and also leads to removal. This becomes water soluble. So because of these two effects, this gemfibrozil has very high likely or high propensity to cause myopathy, especially if added with statins. And by causing all this gemfibrozil can increase plasma concentration of statins nearly 2 times. You can see, so increase in plasma concentration is always associated with increase in. But niacin is also, though causes rarely, but this is also involved in causing this myopathy very highly, high propensity, but rarely involved because very less commonly used this niacin. And this myopathy is caused by a different mechanism. This is pharmacodynamic interaction. This is all pharmacokinetic interaction. Niacin is pharmacodynamic interaction. This is because it causes more enhanced cholesterol synthesis inhibition or this in the skeletal muscles. That is the reason. This is pharmacodynamic interaction. So in US, this statin in combination, fixed dose combination with fibrates or niacin is not available. They have discontinued it, knowing this is the risk. So they should not be sold as in a same formulation, same tablet. They can be sold as statin separately, fibrate separately, but not in a fixed dose combination, not in the same tablet, same formulation. They should not be co-formulated, right? And also this has been also evidences has been accumulated from the studies that if these combinations are used, then they do not offer any additional advantage in decreasing atherosclerosis associated this cardiovascular disease events, then the statin monotherapy. If statin alone is used and then these events were measured, and when these combinations were used, events were measured, there were no difference. So that was also the reason. First, this safety reason, and other is there is no added advantage. So why should we take risk? So this is the reason these are actually withdrawn, or means not available, these fixed dose combination. Also, these drugs which interfere with the oxidation of the these statins, especially oxidating enzymes, cytochrome enzymes are oxidating, especially those which are inhibiting oxidation of those statins which are primarily metabolized by CYP3A4. CYP3A4. So CYP3A4 is mainly this atorvastatin, lovastatin, simvastatins are metabolized by CYP3A4. So they can cause myopathy if it is inhibited. And this is a kind of PK interaction, because if these metabolizing enzymes are inhibited, what will happen? It will lead to increase plasma concentration of these statins. So these drugs are usually those which actually interfere with this. So these are azole antibiotic, antifungals, as I said, ketoconazole, itraconazole, erythromycin, मैक्रोलाइड्स में, एंड इसके अलावा आपको और भी ड्रग है जैसे साइक्लोस्पोरिन, राइट, एंड प्रोटीएज इनहिबिटर्स. These all can inhibit CYP3A4, so those drugs can increase the risk of myopathy. So pharmacokinetic interaction. This pravastatin, fluvastatin, rosuvastatin has lesser risk of causing myopathy, because they are metabolized by different enzymes. First of all, pravastatin is minimally or not metabolized. Fluvastatin is metabolized by 2C9. Rosuvastatin is metabolized only 10%, so that is by also 2C9. So they have lesser risk of causing myopathy than the other statins. But as there is always apprehension that combining drug like this, suppose fibrates we have added with statin for additional reduction, because fibric acid derivatives are important in decreasing hypertriglyceridemia. So if they are added, and we know that combining two may result in myopathy and all that. So with that notion in our mind, we should always weigh the risk and benefit analysis must be done, that we cannot just do away with the combined therapy. If it is needed, it should be combined, but we should always weigh the risk and benefit analysis. That is what a doctor or a clinician does. This is the role of the clinician, because drug is available in the market. Anybody can prescribe anything to anyone, but it is your acumen, clinical acumen, that what should be given at what doses for how many days. This is what you have learned over the years. This is not the one day task, and anybody, like chemist gives the drug to anybody who asks for it. It doesn't mean he became a doctor or not. The clinician has loads of responsibility on his shoulders, right? And choice of statins should also be based on the patient, that is should be patient centric, patient oriented, and that should involve many factors in that. That is cost, whether it is affordable by the patient or not, drug interactions, because other drugs patient must be taking, so you should consider that also, which drug is to be used. Suppose he is taking some CYP3 inhibitor drug, so you should avoid which drug is statins to avoid. ADRs, he is already having drugs which have increased risk of similar ADRs and all that. And desired intensity, how much you want to, this desired intensity means the doses of the statins that are actually now considered as low doses, moderate doses or high doses, and it depends upon the anticipated reduction in the LDLC level you are looking for. That may vary from 30 to 60%. So you can accordingly use low intensity, moderate intensity or high intensity therapy. So this is now a common term: low intensity statin therapy, high intensity heparin statin therapy, etc. especially those patients who are to be put, this rosuvastatin and pravastatins are better tolerated in patients who have already actually suffered from a myalgia kind of symptoms with other statins in the past. So the treatment should be initiated with rosuvastatin or pravastatin. They are better tolerated, right? And rosuvastatin very potent also, and it is one of the very commonly used statin. Atorvastatin or rosuvastatin most commonly used. In fact, some of the statins in some countries have been made over the counter because the advantages of these drugs, when I talk about their clinical indications, are so many that policy for makers actually decided to sell them over the counter without the prescription. Because what happens in Western countries, the cost of medical consultation is very high, and it should be, if it is available over the counter, this everybody can buy. Cost of the medicine is also high, and that too with consultation, that is enormous. Cost is enormous, exorbitant. So keeping that in mind, that everybody should have advantages of these statins, so they have made it over the counter. But the problem of the over the counter, people have realized that suppose somebody is really having hypercholesterolemia, so just by taking a small dose, suppose a small dose actually made over the counter, not all these strengths, lower strength, suppose a drug is available in the 10 to 40 milligram strengths, so only just 10 milligram made available, suppose. So person will take, though he is having requirement of higher doses, but he never meets a doctor and he started taking over the counter medication. So he is being under treated. In fact, though he is taking statins, but his LDL will not come to the target level because he requires higher doses. So thus there is no meeting of the doctor and the patient. So that way this is also a setback of the OTC use of statins. So it may be under treatment of certain patients, and for some it may be good because it will reduce the cost of the consultation and all that. So I think in Britain it is available. Simvastatin as over the counter is available. Those who are using amlodipine or amiodarone should not use simvastatin doses more than 20 milligram. That is the maximum one can use. And if they are using verapamil or diltiazem, the dose should not exceed 10 milligram, equal to or less than 10 milligram. This is something which one should take care of. I was talking about high intensity, moderate intensity, low intensity, so these also have different efficacy. So these are the potent drugs and have a high efficacy also. So these are the drugs which are used for high intensity. When your expected reduction in LDL is more than 50%. As I said, the range is 30 to 60%. And for moderate intensity, you can use all the drugs, but doses are different. All the statins available. But for low this thing, you do not use these highly efficacious drug, and you exclude this fluvastatin XL also, but other drugs can be used, right? So where your target of reduction of LDL is less than 30%. So that is why I was saying that if a patient has a certain range, suppose he is having LDL of 200, and I want target LDL in that particular patient, considering all the risk factor and all that, I want to bring it down to 100. It means he requires 50% reduction. Then I need to give high doses. I will actually prefer high intensity statin therapy in those patients. So by using this OTC use, so those patients will not come in contact with the clinicians and will be under treated. That is the concern only. There is also conflicting data on the use of effect or the effect of statin on cognitive ability or cognition. Some studies suggest they might impair cognition, but up till now the analysis of the all published data was done, and it was found that it has neutral effect on the cognition, does not affect cognition. In fact, some studies have said that may improve cognition and can be used, can improve dementia. This was a hype few years back. In fact, that statin can be used for Alzheimer's and all that. They were tried for statin have been tried in almost all indications, important indication. Let me tell you this. They were considered as wonder pills, wonder drugs. High doses of if you use higher doses of statins, there is small increased risk of diabetes. Though statins is the part and parcel of the therapy of the diabetic patients to avoid this, cardiovascular disease risk and all that. But higher doses is associated with those who do not have diabetes and using statin for some reasons. Because of hypercholesterol and all that, so there is a risk of diabetes, but the benefits are immense. If you see the reduction in the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease events and mortality related to these atherosclerotic disease, the benefits are immense. Then this little increase in the risk of diabetes this benefit outweighs that risk, and one cannot be denied these benefits because of there is small increase in the risk of diabetes. Atorvastatin is the drug of choice in case when the patient has severe renal dysfunction, because it does not require any dose. It is good thing that atorvastatin is very commonly used statin, and it is patient with renal deficiency. This renal dysfunction does not require adjustment of doses, and most of this diabetes and cardiac patient may have renal dysfunction. This is quite common, and this three compounds, atorva, lovastatin and simvastatin, that is also approved for children. These are the drugs. Other than that, I will talk different classes of drug, then I will tell you which other drugs are used in children or pregnant women or all that. So heterozygous familial hypercholesterolemia, heterozygous, so in individuals more than equal to more than 11 years. But pravastatin is also approved, but that can be used in children more than 8 years of age. So these drugs, some statins are also available for children, but they are contraindicated during pregnancy, and in fact they should be stopped before the conception occurs, if feasible, before the pregnancy. And use by lactating mothers should be discouraged, because the data or adequate data on safety of the the nursing infant is not very well established, or not data are inadequate to come at a conclusion whether it is safe to nursing infants or not. So it should be discouraged in fact during lactation. Now, because we know that these other drugs are very commonly associated with increasing the risk of myopathy and all that, so we should promote use of other non-statins in addition to statins for the management of this ASCVD risk, that is atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk, those who are at high risk of these events or disease. So especially now it is recommended that you can use bile acid sequestrants, that these resins, or ezetimibe, that is oral cholesterol, intestinal cholesterol inhibitor, absorption inhibitor, and you can use this PCSK9. These drugs are actually in high risk patient and the target LDL reduction is not achieved. You can add this and they can further increase the the reduction in the LDL-C. So this is the advantage, and their use should be promoted. And elevated TGs are risk factor for pancreatitis. As I said, if they are more than 1000 and something, then there is a risk. So these drugs, fibrates, etc., because they are good for hypertriglyceridemia, but these therapy may be used in these statins if they are alone not capable of handling this, because statin also have effect on triglyceride. So one should not should always weigh the risk and benefit ratio, and then only decide that it is not that you can never use statin with fibrates and all that. So this should be always considered. And whenever you are using statins with either cyclosporine, fibrates or niacin, the daily dose of the statin should not exceed 25% of the maximum daily dose of statin. Suppose atorvastatin has the highest daily dose of 80 milligram, then you cannot use more than 20 milligram in those patients who are receiving fibrates, niacin or cyclosporin, etc. Got my point? 1/4 of the maximum daily dose. These are the clinical indications for atorvastatin, because it is not possible to, some statins may be having restricted indication and all that, because the atorvastatin is the most commonly used and very commonly used, and so I have taken clinical indications of atorvastatin. So it is indicated for hypolipidemia and different hyperlipidemia and cardiovascular disease prevention. See, primary hypercholesterolemia and mixed dyslipidemia, because it has effect on both triglyceride, HDL and LDL, etc. Or primary hypercholesterolemia, only LDL is raised, isolated. Hypertriglyceridemia, isolated hypertriglyceridemia. Primary beta lipoproteinemia means deep protein, VLDL, LDL, and all these are beta lipoprotein. Homozygous familial hypercholesterolemia, I said that, but the higher doses will be used. In heterozygous, there is a response, adequate response. Homozygous response is poor though. Cardiovascular disease prevention. So why it is required? To reduce risk of stroke and heart attack in patient who do not have any evidence of coronary heart disease or coronary artery disease, but having type 2 diabetes mellitus. No history of, got my point? So it is used to decrease risk of cardiovascular disease in patient of type 2 diabetes mellitus, though there is no history of any. Decrease the risk of stroke, heart attack and revascularization procedure in those who do not have evidence of coronary artery disease, but having other risk factors like cardiovascular risk factors like smoking, hypercholesterolemia, and this thing early, means this risk of stroke and heart attack and revascularization in those who have other risk factors other than type 2 diabetes mellitus, means other risk factors. So smoking, hypertension, family history of early this thing, CHD, early CHD, if they have history of early CHD. So all these risk factors are associated, but there is no established coronary artery disease. So just to reduce the risk of all this should be used. And in established coronary heart disease, they can be used to reduce the risk of MI, revascularization process or stroke, or can also be used to decrease hospitalization for those who have established CSD, reduce the hospitalization for congestive heart failure and angina. So it has very preventive role, So statin therapies are considered as very important therapy in case of cardiovascular disease. Almost every individual with cardiovascular disease must be receiving statin, one or other statin. This is very important class of drugs. That is why. So today only we'll discussed about statins and the lipoprotein metabolism, because that was essential to tell you how this lipoprotein metabolism occurs, so that if I talk about the drug, you actually can catch what I'm talking about, to where exactly the drug is acting, right? If you know this lipoprotein metabolism, this reverse transport, cholesterol transport, apolipoproteins and all that. So this was about this statins and all that. And once again, I would like to remind you about the importance of this Telegram app. You all should have this, and not only have this, join this group on this app, so that you have all the timetable or classes means timetable of the day, which classes to be taken, which subject, what topic is to be covered, who will be taking the classes. So all that information is available to you, and that is made available to you well before the class, so that you can attend those classes which you feel is important for you, or you find them interesting. If you have time, you can always plan the day, activity of the day, if you have prior information. Inform all your friends that there is another app called Unacademy Learning app, where also there are free classes in the form of special classes, and these are also absolutely free I also means the same educators will take class at different platforms. Like I teach on Plus platform, that is a paid platform. I teach on this Unacademy Learning App special classes. I take YouTube classes, NEET PG Live Daily. So these special classes, this interface here is a different on this app. You will enjoy it because you have here opportunity to interact with the educator. Like in YouTube, you cannot contact with me and cannot during the class. I cannot resolve your issues and all that. But here in special classes, that advantage is that you can do real-time live chatting and that are all visible to me. So that way, and on YouTube, I am just seeing my slides only. Nothing is visible to me. If I want to see anything in chat, I have to have another system where actually I can see direct stream. So that will actually distract me from teaching and all that. So this interface is really good, and you have opportunity to ask doubts, questions and all that. And if you follow the educator there, if you join there and suppose you like my classes, you can follow me. If you follow me, you can send me direct message. If you become my follower, you can send me direct message. Then I can reply to any message of yours that is related to query that is related to academics or these classes. Nothing else will be entertained there. So don't wait for what you are waiting for. Just download this and install it so that you can take advantage of this free service. Free things should never be wasted. You should always make maximum use of these free service. For those who actually want, other than these free classes, other facilities in terms of the study materials, the more interaction and clarification, and the other courses which are actually customized based on the different PG entrance examinations, and many other things, more involvement with the educators, and such as guidance or strategy, then how to score well, how to prepare and everything. So these kind of services are there, but that are available on paid basis, and for that Unacademy has another channel that is called NEET PG Plus, and this offers many host of other services that are not available on free platform to its subscribers. So it is to come on this platform, you need to get subscription, and subscription is available for 2 periods, 12 months and 24 months. We always recommend 24 months, but 12 months, if you are planning for 12 months, that is also good enough, because you need some time to get acquainted with all the educators from different speciality. You should have enough time to attend all the special courses that are actually floated on this platform for your need, based on different PG entrance examination, all that. So that what period is required, and that is the time during which we expect that you will be having all kind of exposure to different subjects, and syllabus will also be roughly covered during this period. So this is important, and the subscription charges are also very reasonable, I suppose. And you can if you apply this code, if you like my classes and all that, you can use my code, so you will get 10% discount also. So if you apply that 10% discount, then the subscription charges for 12 months become roughly 20,000 and 25,000 for 24 months. So it up to you which one you want to so take. Again, I am reminding you that use my code if you really like me, because if you join this NEET PG Plus, we also get kind of appreciation from the Unacademy team. So and 10% off is you will be getting, that is in always your benefit. So with this I would say that you should be there. I suggest that you should be there, or recommend that you should be there on the NEET PG Plus for the benefits which you can get on this platform. Nowhere else are available, and this is highly kind of if you are truly involved with this NEET PG Plus and take full advantage, it will be addicting kind of thing. So I would once again request that you should join, and I can only suggest you. The rest depends on you, because after all you have to pay, and the call should be taken by you. But you are attending these classes on live daily, NEET PG live daily. That is really, if you are enjoying these services, nothing better than this. And if you liked this lecture, you give me a thumbs up and share. You can share this information to others, spread this information to other friends also, that on YouTube you can watch live lectures from the specialist from different subjects, that can help you score well in your exams and all that. So make this information viral and give me a thumbs up. That will also boost my morale as well. So for the day, I think I'm done, and it is time to say goodbye and good night. Thank you.